we're gonna go over the economic systems that happen all the time. This is a generally simplified understanding of economic systems. It gets way more complicated than this, but this is generally what you need to know for any economics class, for a government class, or just as general knowledge. So, a society or a government has three main questions they always have to answer. And the way they answer these three questions determines a lot about their society. First, what should be produced? So, that depends on the individuals most of the time, the consumers. But the government could also do that as well. Second, how should it be produced? Should it be by large corporations? Should it be by large amounts of businesses? Should the government be able to produce? It depends. And then third, who gets to use the product? The way a society answers these three questions can determine if they're more capitalistic or more communist. So let's understand that. There's two main types of economies you need to know. There's a free market economy and a command economy. A free market economy is guided by the idea of laissez-faire economics, this idea of little government intervention. They want to make sure that the free market is involved, very little, if not any, regulations whatsoever. So they believe that what should be produced is based on the market, based on what individual consumers want. They think that it should be produced by corporations, businesses, private industry, and that people that can buy or purchase individual products should be able to use it. Very little, if any, government intervention in free market economies whatsoever. This is your typical capitalistic society. Command economies are almost like communism. The government has extreme involvement or complete control of the economy and answers the three economic questions. So, what should be produced? That's determined by the government. The government has quotas or specific amounts of the product they want to produce. How should it be produced? The government can produce it. They determine the specific regulations, everything. Who gets to use it? Again, that's based on the government. The quota system, governments basically give products to certain people based on their needs. So the main difference is here. Command economies have almost everything centrally planned. Government sets prices, quotas, and determines everything. Because of their economies, they have little competition, so they have typically lower quality goods and higher cost products. Free market economies, due to their hands-off approach, have much more competition and thus have higher quality and lower cost products. But a lot of people believe that free market economies are more predatorial, that they harm consumers sometimes because they provide less public goods. And that's generally a distinct idea between them. A command economy provides more public goods than a market economy. Then we have kind of in the middle. Most countries in the world, if not almost every country in the world, is a mixed economy. That being a combination of both government involvement and free market. So they have less regulations than a command economy, but more than a free market. So it's basically a mix of the two. What should be produced? It's determined by the government and the people. How should it be produced? Well, people produce it. People produce it in corporations, but the government has a lot of regulations on that. Minimum wage and many other things. Who gets to use the product? Well, the government can determine it based on taxes, subsidies, etc., but it's mostly determined by supply and demand. So a mixed economy is kind of in between. Then we have the invisible hand. It's the idea that society's goals will be met when individuals seek their own best interests. So it's basically this idea that if everyone seeks their profit maximizing or what's best for them, then society will be better off. Not necessarily always true, but it's a general idea. So let's go through these two different questions. Pause the video, try to solve them. Okay, let's first talk about 16. Command economies differ from capitalist economies mainly because of which of the following. So let's go through these. Command economies have a higher price of oil. That could technically be true, but not always. Capitalist economies have a lower price of oil. Could be true, but not always. Command economies have a higher degree of government control over resources. That's definitely true. We'll look back at that one. Capitalist economies have a higher degree of government control over resources. That's not true. Command economies rely on prices to allocate resources. That's definitely not true. Capitalist economies rely on prices, not command. So the answer here is C. Command economies have a higher degree of government control. Now let's go over 11. Which of the following is a primary trade-off faced by a command economy compared to a market economy? Higher levels of unemployment in exchange for lower consumer prices? Technically, but not really. So let's mark that off. Greater economic freedom in exchange for reduced government stability? That's not true. Lower income inequality in exchange for reduced efficiency and resource allocation? That's definitely true. Faster innovation in exchange for increased consumer risk? That's not true. Stronger property rights in exchange for higher taxation? That's not true. So the answer here is C. Generally, for command economies, they want to have less income inequality. They want to make sure that everything is controlled. When the government controls everything, they try to make everything equal. So it's almost like capitalist and communist. It's what you learn in a government class. They're distinct differences. Command economies are typically more authoritarian, more controlling. They have quotas, sanctions. They're generally more isolationist. All of those things could be tested on the AP microeconomics exam. All you need to know is the general ideas of a command and market economy, and that we have mixed economies as well.